Hey again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo coming to you once again from Lost in Anime Towers here in beautiful uptown Kyoto, where winter is settling in. It's nice and chilly, and that's appropriate because it's time for the Winter 25 season preview. And this is season preview number 55 by my count. Please don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Pretty much a down season, I think it's fair to say, but we'll get into details. You never know, they can always surprise you. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be with you again as always. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks here for LIA and the YouTube channel too, because we've got all kinds of stuff coming up. The year-end countdown, some exciting stuff with the podcast with Samu, and of course the Anime of the Year video will be coming up as well. So all of that coming in the month of December and into January. But for now, again, it's time for the Winter 25 season preview. So let's talk about Winter 2025. And the first thing I have to say is, while I haven't done the reckoning on 2024 yet, I have a suspicion it's going to wind up having been a good year for anime, by recent standards at least. Probably not as good as 23, but better than average, I would say. 25, on the other hand, I don't see a tremendous amount of stuff out there that looks interesting in the coming seasons. Certainly there are some interesting shows coming up, but on the whole, less so than I would like. And very likely spring, summer, and fall, we're going to have a pretty heavy weight to carry because winter looks pretty bleak, I have to be honest. As you know, my usual percentage, almost invariably, although I never plan it this way, it just works out, but I almost invariably wind up previewing about 1/3 of the series on the schedule. And this time around, it's barely 20%. There are 53 new series currently scheduled at the time I'm recording this, and I'm only previewing 11. Now, I don't know that I've ever previewed less than 11. I may have, I may not. I'm honestly not sure. It's definitely on the low end. Just as a raw number, 11 is on the low end, and certainly barely 20% is possibly the lowest ever percentage of shows I'm previewing off of the schedule. It's really, really low. It is what it is. 53, by the way, is a pretty normal number for a winter season these days. As you know, if you follow the blog at all, or if you follow anime at all for that matter, winter and summer tend to be the smaller seasons, and spring and fall the bigger ones. At one point, 50 shows would have been considered, a huge anime season. Nowadays, it's practically tiny. Last winter was 51. This winter's 53. That's about the same. It's a light season. It really is. There's really nothing trend-wise. I don't see a lot of there's no like boom in rom-coms like we had a couple seasons last year, or sports anime, or sci-fi. The only thing I really noticed in terms of a trend in looking at the schedule was that there are a lot of isekai manga adaptations, which I find kind of makes me a little queasy, to be honest with you, because the isekai light novel ones, they're a constant at this point. But inevitably, isekai has more and more become a major component of manga too, because it's frankly an easy buck, so it's not surprising. It's just that's how capitalism works, and now we're starting to see more and more isekai manga adapted into anime, and if what I'm seeing is a lot of series that at first blush I look at the art, I look at the premise, I think, oh, that's got to be a light novel. And I scroll down and it's a manga, and that's happening a lot this season, and I suspect that's going to be a constant thing from now on. I don't think that's going anywhere, unfortunately, but it is what it is. We also don't have a ton of big time directors working this season. There's just not a lot of there's not a lot that stands out on the positive side. But let's get into it. We'll talk about it because, inevitably, in any season, there's some stuff that looks really interesting. There's some stuff that looks really good. And there's, there are exceptions here. There's some things. We'll start out with Jibaku Shounen Hanako-kun. Now, we're in the highest expectations tier, which, as you know, is my highest tier. I've only got 2 shows in it this season, which is low, but when you're only previewing 11, that's not surprising. And clearly my number 1 is Jibaku Shounen Hanako-kun, which the second season, really a long time coming. Frankly, I'm surprised it didn't come sooner, because this is really a massively popular manga. It shares space with Kuroshitsuji in GF Fantasy, which is a very interesting shonen magazine that has a lot of series that appeal beyond the shonen demographic. But it hasn't been around as long as Kuroshitsuji, but it's been around long enough that it should have had more than one core anime season at this point. And the 2 little omake seasons we had after school Hanako-kun, which if you want to count those. So we're finally getting a second season. It's a fascinating, interesting, surprisingly dark manga, really intelligently written. Fantastic performance by Ogata Megumi as Hanako-kun and Tsukasa-kun also. We did lose Ando Masaomi, the director of season 1, which is a bit of a concern because Ando is a very good director, first of all, but also because the look of this series is so distinct and so unique. You have to be really hopeful that they're going to be able to capture that again. The new director is Fukui Yohei, who has very little track record as a director, but has worked on some great series in other roles. So, interestingly, did not work on the first season as an episode director or key animator or anything like that. So, interesting choice, and we'll hope for the best there. There's not a lot else. I mean, I've read far enough into the manga to know what's coming in the second season. It should be great. The manga never really stops being great. It's great all the way through its run. It's still ongoing. The other thing is the first season skipped a fair amount of material for some reason. And to the point where it was even speculated when this was first leaked that it might be a reboot from the beginning. It's not, apparently. But whether maybe they'll find a way to put some of those missing arcs back, it would sure be nice. I'm not expecting it, though. Either way, that's my top pick of the season, Jibaku Shounen Hanako-kun. Now, and it is a very light season for sequels for me, too, by the way. The next one in the category, and only other one in the category, is Medalist, which is a manga about figure skating. Very highly regarded, well-regarded manga. It's been nominated for many awards. It's won multiple awards. It won the Shogakukan Award. It won the Next Manga Award. It's been nominated for a bunch of other things. I'm not particularly interested in figure skating per se. That's not a sport that interests me, but I was never that interested in Go or Karuta or even Rakugo to an extent. So in reality, not being interested in the sport is not a big problem if the material is well done. So we'll see. This one is a very good selling manga too. It's getting adapted by a studio called Engi, which is not, to say the least, a studio with a strong track record. I mean, if you scroll down their list, it's not an august group of series. Let's put it that way. But it has a pretty good staff. Yamamoto Yasutaka is directing. Pretty solid director. Hanada Juki, one of the best adapting screenwriters there is. The story here is a kind of a former phenom figure skater who's kind of washed out as a competitor, who winds up taking on a young 11-year-old girl named Inori, who's an ice dancing prodigy. Ice dancing is not a discipline that gets as much attention as other figure skating disciplines either, so that's kind of interesting. And he becomes her coach, and it looks, and I haven't read any of the manga, but it gets good enough reviews and it's won enough awards that I tend to think there's something there. I know figure skating is going to be challenging to communicate through animation. This is also a Studio Engi that's done a lot of CGI too, so I have a lot of concerns there, but the previews look pretty good. So I would describe myself as hopeful more than optimistic, but yes, hopeful. I mean, I do think there's a pretty good chance this will live up to some of its potential. I certainly hope so because we're desperate for quality this season. It's just been confirmed, by the way, that today, as I record this, confirmed for 13 episodes. But if it does well, another season is always a possibility. And that's it, honestly, for the highest expectations tier this season. It's only 2 shows. We'll move on to mid-table, and there's only 4 shows in this one. But again, when the whole preview is 11, not a big surprise there. Another sequel, Kusuriya no Hitorigoto second season. To no one's surprise, this will get a second, a third, however many seasons it takes to complete, it will get. There was a little controversy with the mangaka who's doing the manga version of the original light novel here, getting arrested on a tax evasion charge, which is interesting. Other than that, though, all signs point to yes with this series. The Apothecary Diaries has been a massive hit. It and Frieren came out roughly at the same time as anime. They were both already big hits as manga, and both exploded when they became anime. Frieren only slightly bigger, but both of them, frankly, huge. And I thought that the first season was really, really good. I'm not a huge. I don't have a lot of light novels on my hit list. I don't frequently rank them in my year-end top 10s, but this is an exception. Every rule has exceptions. This is an exception to my rule on light novels. It's just a good series. It might even make my top 10 for 2024. I haven't crunched those numbers yet, but it's possible. Mao Mao, the protagonist, I love Mao Mao. I think she's a great character. And of course, Yuki Aoi does a tremendous job, as she usually does. She's fantastic in that role. Some of the mysteries themselves are a little bit hit and miss with me, and the male lead is a little hit and miss with me. But I did like Lakan, who emerged as a side character, especially late in the series, and turned out to be Mao Mao's father. I thought he was very interesting, and his arc was great. So I really liked the first season, and I suspect I'll really like the second. There's no major changes in staff here. It's almost a split core. I mean, if it wasn't greenlit in advance, it couldn't have been much more than... there couldn't have been much delay there. So I expect continuity here. I don't know how the story progresses in the source material, but I'm not necessarily expecting a big change in quality there. So that's the other sequel that I'm kind of into. Then we have Sakamoto Days, which is a big Shonen Jump hit. It was my podcast partner Samu's choice as his top next big thing candidate. Mine was Yochiin Wars, by the way, which just got its anime adaptation officially, almost officially leaked today. It'll be announced at Jump Festa in a couple of weeks. So, Sakamoto Days. I have tried the manga on a couple occasions. It honestly doesn't do that much for me. But again, Samu considers it a really great series. And I don't always agree with him, but I credit it. I credit that opinion to the point where I'm definitely going to go into the anime with an open mind. Another series, a puzzler, because it is a hugely popular Jump series, and it took 19 volumes before it got an anime, which is almost inexplicable in the modern era. You don't find Jump series that are as popular as this one, that sell as many manga as this does, take that long to get an anime. And it's popular enough that I might have expected it to get like an IG treatment like Haikyuu, or Bones like Boku no Hero Academia, but it didn't. It ended up at TMS Entertainment. The previews have not looked great, frankly, but I have to think Shueisha cares enough about this to try to do something decent with the anime. I expect it to get a complete adaptation or close to it, as popular as the manga is. The story here is a former assassin who's grown fat and contented with a peaceful family life, and he ends up being drawn back into the world he thought he was away from, and he's fantastically skilled in spite of his rust, shall we say. It's an interesting combination of comedy and action. Even I could see that much in the parts I've read. And a lot of people really love this series. So my hope is that the anime will capture what it is that people love about it and make me love it. I'm not expecting that to happen, but it won't shock me if it does. Then we have Kono Kaisha ni Suki na Hito ga imasu, which is, it's definitely my sleeper pick this season. A workplace comedy, well-regarded manga, adult cast. It's about a couple of coworkers who are desperately trying to hide their romance from the rest of the office, even though they can't keep their hands off each other because they're so in love with each other. It sounds pretty fun. I have not read any of the manga, but it does seem to be very well liked. The studio is Blade, which I'm very, very unfamiliar with them as a studio. I don't know much of their work at all. Nobody on the staff really stands out, but looking at the premise, I'm hopeful here. This is a series, there's very little. We had quite a few series about grown-ups and working this past fall season, the one that's currently wrapping up. That's not the case so much in winter. So I'm really hoping this one turns out to be a good one. And finally in this category, we have Honey Lemon Soda, which is one of the biggest selling shoujo manga in recent years. It's sold about 12 million copies. It's on 26 volumes, which again, if it were a shonen, it would certainly have gotten an anime long before. Now, shoujo these days does not get animes nearly as often or as quickly or as well financed as shonen does. It did get a live-action film, and in fact, a lot of popular shoujo go to live-action drama rather than anime, although sometimes they get both. Honey Lemon Soda is about a loner girl who's been kind of abused and bullied in middle school, and gets to high school, meets a flashy yellow-haired guy, thus the Honey Lemon illusion, and he sort of draws her out of her shell. It sounds like fairly boilerplate shoujo romance, but I think people seem to like the manga pretty well, and it certainly sells. And we don't get that many big shoujo these days in anime form, so I'm curious at the very least. This one is JC Staff. JC Staff typically in recent years has not been glorious in terms of quality, but this looks pretty decent, judging by the preview. So that is Honey Lemon Soda. Next up, we have the modestly interested category. And boy, oh boy, I tell you, you might think 11 out of 53 shows I'm previewing, you must have really been harsh, high bar to make the preview. No, believe me, if some of these shows in this category would not even have made my preview for fall, but I wanted to at least have a pool of shows to draw from, so I didn't set that bar terribly high. We have Hana wa Saku, Shura no Gotoku. This one is about a girl on a little island. She does not play golf, by the way, who loves storytelling to children, so she joins the broadcasting club at her high school. There has a kind of a healing, quote-unquote, cute girls doing cute things. There's kind of that whiff to this, but the manga gets good reviews. The Studio Bind is, or Bind, I don't even know how they pronounce it. It's basically the Mushoku Tensei studio. They haven't done a hell of a lot else. But even though I'm not a huge fan of that series, I think it was a pretty decent production. So, fairly, I would expect this to get at least a decent treatment. Who the hell knows? Übel Blatt. Now, this is an interesting one. 2 satellite shows this season, and in this category. This is the first one. Pretty popular manga. seinen manga ended in 2019, and there was a time when you'd say, "Oh, 6 years later, that's it. We'll never see that ship has sailed. We'll never see an anime." But anime seems to love reaching back and adapting long finished manga these days. So 6 years is nothing really. I've heard this called like a poor man's berserk, among other things. It's about a man with a scar who wields a black sword and kind of a dystopian future. I don't know too much about Übel Blatt, except I know the manga was quite popular to the point where even though I didn't read it, I knew about it. And so it kind of surprised me when I realized it had never gotten an anime, but it never did. So again, I'm taking a flyer on this. It has a fantasy element. There's not much of that this season, so could be interesting. Zenshuu is an original. Very few original anime this season that look interesting. This one is from MAPPA. It's about a young anime director who's assigned to do... She's kind of a up-and-rising star. She directs a big hit, and she gets assigned to a series about romance, first love, except the problem is she's never had any romance or first love in her life. So she kind of goes on a quest to try to learn about romance before she makes the series. So who knows on that? The writer here is Ueno Kimiko. The writer is, of course, the most important person on an original series, as we know. She's done a lot of pretty good adaptations. Not too much of a track record with originals. Not much of a track record with originals, so we'll see where we go with that. Next up is Sousei no Aquarion, Myth of Emotions. Aquarion, you probably know it, is an old franchise. There was an anime 20 years ago. I think it might have been one of the first satellite series ever produced, actually. This is also satellite, by the way. But I never really... There had been other projects in the Aquarion canon, too. I think other, like, manga, maybe even games, too. I never really was in that orbit. I don't know too much about it. I know that it's kind of a sci-fi after an alien invasion, post-apocalyptic. What I can tell for sure is that Myth of Emotions has a completely different art style than any Aquarion series that I'm aware of. And again, I'm going in totally blind on this. I know nothing. I know almost nothing about Aquarion. Very, very little. But who knows? Could be interesting. Then the last one, again, total shot in the dark. But this season, that's pretty much all we got in this category. That's Babanbabanban Vampire. 1, 2, 3, 4. Babanbabanban Vampire. Excuse me. There's only 4. This one is a comedy about a vampire working at a bath who's trying to keep the 15-year-old son of the bathhouse owner a virgin till he's 18 so he can suck his blood. But the kid falls in love with someone at his school, so the vampire has to try to sabotage the romance. Could be funny, could be completely stupid. I really have no idea. But I'm taking a shot on it because it's such a thin season. An interesting footnote on this one is it's by Gaina, which is what's left of what emerged from the ashes of Gainax, unless you count Studio Kara, of course, and Trigger. But they're far enough removed at this point that I think Gaina is the closest thing to a true successor studio to Gainax, and it's. I haven't even seen anything from them in years. I frankly didn't even know they still existed. But I'll give it a shot. It's just more curiosity, maybe morbid curiosity. I'm not expecting a heck of a lot. And folks, that's it for winter 2025 on the series front. It's not much, is it? We do have one. Okay, my definitely blog. Let's run through that. The 2 shows I will be blogging for sure. 3 actually are Hanako-kun, Medalist, and Kusuriya no Hitorigoto. My only sleeper this season is Konokaisha ni Suki Nahito ga Imasu, the workplace rom-com. I would love to pick more sleepers. Sleepers are one of my favorite parts of this. When I hit on sleepers like I did with this season, the fall season, it's great. That's all I got, honestly. I can't look at the schedule and see anything else that really screams out sleeper to me. We do have one OVA, 2 seasons in a row with an OVA. That's rare. Skate OVA extra part. Skate, I quite liked. I thought the last arc of Skate really kind of went off the rails big time, but for the most part, I liked it, and it's a fun, goofy series that doesn't, and I think it's at its best when it doesn't take itself too seriously, which should lend itself to succeeding in OVA format. At least that's my hope. That's coming out March 19th. And then a couple of theatrical films. At the end of January, we have Rose of Versailles, Versailles no Bara movie. Absolutely one of the true legends of shoujo romance in shoujo fantasy, in anime and manga, set at the time of the French Revolution. Could be interesting. What worries me about this is you're talking about a 10-volume manga adapted in one film, and the folks I know who are big fans of Rose of Versailles are pretty skeptical of this film. But at least when it comes out on Blu-ray, I'll definitely check it out. And finally, Mononoke movie Dai ni Shou, Hinezumi. This is the second of the new Mononoke movies. The first one was called Karakasa, and it was quite good. I'm not a huge Mononoke fan like some people, but I do recognize that Nakamura Kenji is one of the auteur directors in the medium. He doesn't seem to work that much these days, so anything he does, I take notice of it and hope for the best. That one is coming out March 14th. And that is my Fall 25 season preview. It's a lean season, like I said, but, seasons, they don't surprise you too often, but sometimes they do, and I'll hope this one will. We do have several shows carrying over from fall to winter too, so there is that much at least. And maybe a season where I don't work as hard on the coverage side of the seasonal stuff. Maybe that's not the worst thing for me. It's been a pretty busy year on that front. As always, I want to thank you very sincerely for tuning in, for watching, for listening, for reading. As you know, as I said, we got a lot of stuff coming up this December and January in the next few weeks, so please keep an eye out for that. Next year, again, my hosting costs, everything going way, way up again in 2025. So, I'm always grateful. I always hate having to ask, but I'm always grateful to those of you who support the site financially. Thank you so much. I will be discussing that topic again in 2025 because I have to if I want to keep doing this. But everyone who reads, everyone who watches, everyone who listens, and of course everyone who supports financially, thank you all for being part of the LIA family, going on 13 years now. It means a lot to me. I hope it means something to you too. As they say, actions like, comment, subscribe, that helps me a lot. And appropriately enough for the winter season, let me say, as I always do, please, 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 if you do nothing else today, stay frosty. Talk to you soon.